The house stood at the edge of a narrow road that led nowhere in particular. Its paint had long since peeled away, leaving the wood beneath exposed to years of sun and rain. The windows, once clear enough to mirror summer fields, now held dust and streaks that softened everything seen through them. The roof sagged slightly in the center. The porch boards creaked even when no one walked on them. Time had not been cruel to the house. It had simply been thorough. A dog lay beside the broken front door. Its fur was coarse in some places and soft in others, patched with the uneven texture of a life lived outdoors. It was a medium-sized dog, not young but not yet old, with deep brown eyes that held a quiet, steady patience. Its ribs did not show sharply, but the frame of its body suggested a time not long past when food had not come easily. A single pale scar crossed one foreleg, the kind that came from survival, not violence. The dog did not sleep. It rested with its head on its paws, ears alert to the whispers of the wind passing through the tall grass. Every few minutes it lifted its head, looking toward the road, though no sound of footsteps had touched that road in a long time. The door beside the dog hung crooked on its hinges. One hinge rusted through so that the wood leaned slightly inward. The dog had nudged it open when it first came, and now the door rested in that position, neither shut nor welcoming, simply waiting. Inside, the house smelled of dust, wood, and the faint, fading memory of old warmth. The dog knew the scent well. It had lived here once, when voices filled the rooms and footsteps crossed the floors, and someone hummed while preparing food in the kitchen. The dog had slept by the fireplace then, curled into the space where the heat lingered longest. The fireplace was cold now. The house was quiet. But houses remember. They remember the echo of laughter in halls, the familiar pattern of someone's gait, the way light once fell on a dining table in the early morning. They remember doors opening and closing, and hands smoothing blankets, and the gentle, everyday rituals that make a place into a home. The dog remembered, too. It remembered a pair of hands that smelled faintly of pine resin, a voice that spoke softly even when calling its name, a whistle that meant return. The dog had followed that whistle once across fields, through tall summer grass, over creeks with slow water. Those days had been long and warm. Those days had ended. The house had once been full. Then fewer meals were cooked. Then fewer footsteps came. Then fewer voices. And finally, no one lived here at all. But the dog had come back. Not because it expected anyone to return. Not because it believed the past could be made whole again. But because the house was the last place where things had been as they should be. A bird landed on the porch railing, tilting its head as it watched the dog. The dog did not move. The bird pecked at something in the wood and flew away. The road stretched empty and long, the grass swaying on either side. The horizon was quiet. The dog lifted its head again and looked toward the distance, as though waiting, not with urgency, not with desperation, but with the simple, steady patience of creatures who understand time differently than humans do. The wind shifted, carrying the faintest trace of familiar scent. Smoke, pine, memory. The dog's ears pricked. The house, though silent, felt something change in its walls. The faint stirring of an echo waking. Someone was coming. Not quickly, not directly, but coming. The dog did not stand. It simply breathed in and waited. Rain came during the night, a slow, steady rain that tapped softly against the broken windows and slid down the cracked boards of the porch. The dog stayed close to the door, curled loosely, its fur damp at the tips. The earth around the house darkened, and the old path leading to the road turned to soft mud. The house held the sound of rain the way old wood holds memory, deeply, gently, without resistance. By morning, the rain had stopped, and mist hung low over the fields. The dog stood and shook itself, droplets scattering into the air. It walked a short distance to the edge of the yard and drank from a puddle that had gathered in a shallow dip of soil. The water was clear, cold, clean enough. The dog's gaze turned then to the road. A figure moved there, far away still but not imagined. A person walking slowly, a worn coat pulled tight against the damp. The dog watched, tail low but not tucked, ears forward, breath steady. There was no rush. The figure walked with the pace of someone who had been traveling for a long time, not with destination but with endurance. As the figure drew closer, the dog recognized the shape. Not instantly, but in the gradual way memory rises like mist, lifting from the ground. The height, the way the shoulders sloped slightly, the way the steps fell, lighter on the left foot, heavier on the right. The man who had once lived in the house. He did not look the same. His hair had grown longer and grayed at the edges. His clothes were patched. His face held something carved and quiet, as though winter had taken more than warmth from him. But his eyes, tired as they were, still knew the path to the door, without needing to search for it. He stopped when he saw the dog. The dog remained still. Their eyes met, and the air between them changed, softened, tightened, deepened. The man did not call the dog's name. The name would have felt too small for what stood between them now. He did not kneel. He did not reach out. He simply stood there, breathing. The dog stepped forward once, then again. Not running, not unsure, just closing a distance that had already begun to close the moment the man appeared on the road. When the dog reached him, it pressed its head gently against his knee. The man's hand trembled before it moved, slow, uncertain at first, then settled into the dog's fur, fingers threading through familiar texture. "Good boy," he said, not with joy, not with grief, but with a voice that had remembered how to soften. The dog exhaled, a warm breath against the man's leg. They stood like that for a long while, surrounded by the damp quiet of the morning. Eventually, the man looked toward the house. His gaze lingered there. The house did not change. It did not brighten or shrink or shift, but it recognized him. Houses remember footsteps. They remember hands on doorknobs. They remember voices. The man walked toward the porch. The dog followed, close but unhurried. The broken door creaked as he touched it. Not in protest, in recognition. He pushed it open gently and stepped inside. The dog crossed the threshold with him. The house, which had been silent for so long, held them both. Not as ghosts of what had been, but as something returning to itself, slowly, carefully, without need for words. The air inside the house was cooler than outside. The man stood just past the doorway, letting his eyes adjust to the dim light. Dust lay thick on the wooden floorboards, softened into uneven patterns by years of stillness. A few leaves had blown in through broken panes, gathering in corners. The air smelled of wood that had known storms, of time left to settle, of something waiting. The dog walked ahead a few steps, then stopped, turning its head to look back, as if to make sure the man was still there. The house had changed little, yet everything felt different now that someone had returned to it. The man did not speak. He moved into the main room slowly, his hand trailing lightly along the wall, fingertips stirring dust but leaving no mark. The fireplace sat cold, scattered with the old ash of fires that had burned long before the dog left. A rusted kettle remained on the mantel. A chair leaned slightly to one side, one of its legs weakened by age or damp. There were no photographs. The house had never been the kind that held memories in frames. It had held them in silence, in habit, in presence. The man sat down on the floor rather than the chair, as though he knew it would not hold him. The dog lay beside him, close but not pressing against him, simply there. The man rested his hand on the dog's back, not moving it, just keeping the contact. They stayed like that for a long time, with no sound except the faint rustle of wind outside. Eventually, the man spoke, quietly, the way one speaks in a place where words feel heavy. "I thought I wouldn't come back," he said. "I tried to leave this place behind." The dog blinked slowly. The man continued, not explaining, not confessing, just speaking. When she was gone, the house felt too big, too empty. His eyes traced the room without landing anywhere. I walked, worked, slept wherever I could, tried to make the silence smaller, but silence follows you. The dog shifted its paws, resting its head against the man's leg. Outside, the wind pressed gently against the loose boards, making them sigh in the familiar way old houses do, as if breathing. The man's shoulders lowered, the tension unwinding one thread at a time. She would have liked that you stayed, he said. He did not need to say her name. The house already knew it. The dog lifted its head for a moment, ears turning toward a sound outside, just a bird, nothing more, then lay down again. The presence of the man was enough. The dog's waiting had not been for joy or for closure, just for this, the return of something that belonged to the place they both remembered. As the afternoon light shifted through the broken window, it moved across the floor, slowly illuminating the room piece by piece. The man watched the light, and the dog watched him. Neither asked for anything. Neither tried to change the past. The house did not feel full again. It was still worn, still quiet, still holding the hollow shape of something that had once lived inside it. But now the silence did not stand alone. It was shared, and that was enough for this day. The man stayed in the house that night. He did not light a fire. There was no need. The air was cool, but not harsh. The dog slept near the doorway, its ears twitching now and then in dreams. The man lay on the floor with his coat rolled beneath his head. The boards creaked softly as the house settled, as if acknowledging his presence again. Sleep did not come easily, not because the house felt strange, but because memory moved differently here, slower, closer, like footsteps heard in the next room. The man listened to the wind pressing through the cracks in the walls. He remembered that same sound from years ago, when another breath had lain beside his. In the morning, light pulled itself gently through the broken window pane. Pale, thin, but steady. The man sat up. The dog lifted its head, tail thumping once on the floor. No greeting was needed. They simply rose and stepped outside together. The yard was still damp from the recent rain. Grass bent under their feet. The air smelled of pine, wet soil, and something faintly sweet, the first sign of spring buds forming inside their branches before appearing. The road lay empty, stretching further than memory felt comfortable following. The man walked slowly around the house, his fingers brushing the siding, the corner beams, the railing of the porch. He was not checking for damage. He was remembering the shape of the place, what his hands had once known without thinking. The dog followed at his heel for a time, then moved off to sniff along the fence line where the wood had collapsed long ago. It found an old bone half buried in the earth. Not fresh, not useful, but familiar. The dog lay down beside it, paws resting lightly near the object, not chewing, not claiming, just acknowledging. The man crouched beside the well near the back of the house, where moss had grown thick around the stones. He leaned over and looked into the darkness, listening for water. He heard nothing. The well had dried years ago, but the stones held their shape. Not everything broken disappears. He stood again and looked toward the field beyond the house, the place where they had planted vegetables, where she had once stood with her sleeves rolled up, laughing at the stubbornness of soil. He could almost see her there, not like a ghost, not imagined, just remembered in the space she once filled. He did not look away quickly. He let the memory stand beside him. The dog came to his side and nudged his hand. The contact was light, steady. The man placed his palm on the dog's head and left it there. No words. They walked back to the porch together. The man sat on the top step, the wood cool beneath him. The dog lay at his feet, stretched out but alert, watching the road once more. The house behind them did not reclaim them. It did not hold them. It simply allowed them to be. Somewhere far off, a train horn sounded, faint, distant, leaving the world as quickly as it entered it. The man listened. The dog listened. Neither stirred. The house remained quiet, but not hollow. The silence had changed shape. It was no longer the silence of absence. It was the silence of return. The next days settled into a rhythm that did not need planning. In the mornings, the man stepped outside and walked the short path to the edge of the field. Sometimes he sat on the porch steps first, letting the sun warm his face before moving. The house seemed to welcome the light too. Its walls were less gray when dawn touched them. The dog would rise beside him, stretch, and walk ahead, checking the familiar scents along the yard before settling nearby. The man did not fix the broken door or repair the windows. He did not need the house to become what it once was. It only needed to be here. Some things are allowed to remain unfinished without being abandoned. He cleared the broken branches from the yard. He swept the porch. He pulled a few weeds from the old garden bed, though he did not know if anything would grow there yet. The house watched without judgment. It remembered hands that had done these same motions before. The dog stayed close, but not clingingly so. It wandered the property as it had in all the seasons before, marking small borders known only to it. It returned often to the man's side, resting its head against his leg, as if to say nothing more than, "I am here too." One afternoon, the man found the old metal bowl in the kitchen, a small dented thing with a worn rim. He carried it outside and rinsed it at the stream that still trickled near the road. The dog watched him, tail still, eyes steady. The man filled the bowl with fresh water and placed it near the porch. The dog drank, slow, unhurried. The man sat beside it in the grass. They did not look at each other. They did not need to. Later that evening, the man sat on the step with his back against the doorframe. The day's light was softening, turning gold before it dimmed. The dog lay stretched across the wooden boards, its breathing deep and even. The man reached down and brushed his fingers through the fur along the dog's neck. The motion was gentle, familiar. Not the gesture of someone remembering, but of someone here. A passing breeze moved through the tall grass. Somewhere a fence creaked. Birds settled for the night. The man looked out toward the field that had once held rows of growing things. It looked empty now, but not vacant. The earth remembers too. He did not think of loss then, not of leaving, not of returning. He thought only of the way the light felt on his face. The dog lifted its head and looked at him, not searching for meaning, just acknowledging the moment they shared. The man spoke, his voice quiet but without strain. "We're home." No grand declaration. No sentiment heavy enough to break under its own weight. Just truth, spoken softly enough for the house to hear it. The dog placed its head back on its paws, eyes half closed. The house stood behind them, steady. The field breathed. The sky deepened. Nothing was repaired, nothing was solved. But something had settled. And settling sometimes is the first real act of living again.